Hello, this is the second of our short seminars on dilapidations, diminution in value in particular, and its evolving and ever increasing relevance during the pandemic's impact on the commercial and leisure property market. This webinar is on loss of rent. Do claims for loss of rent in dilapidations cases and for other attendant losses, mezzanine profits as they're usually called, do they have merit or do they not? So Neil is going to kick off with some thoughts and arguments as to why loss of rent and mezzanine profits claims do have merit.
So again, in this particular scenario, I'm a landlord who has just taken a property back at lease expiry. The property has been left in what we would consider as landlord shocking condition. The tenant hasn't spent a penny on it for a number of years, and they're in breach of the repair, reinstatement and redecoration covenants. The roof is leaking, there's buckets throughout the property that's collecting the rainwater, and like I say, it's been left in a shocking condition. The building surveyors acting on my behalf have identified these works and suggested that it would take at least 3 months to undertake the works and to put the property back into repair. During those 3 months, I'm not going to be able to find a tenant. My agents have advised that marketing will be impossible because of the condition. There is no point in showing somebody around because of the way the property has been left, and there's no way I'm going to gauge any interest at all. So I'm going to be left with at least 3 months where I can't secure any interest, 3 months before I can even start marketing. So once you take that into account and then start marketing and hopefully agree some kind of deal, I'm looking many, many months until I can actually receive any rental income for this particular property. But that's also, I've got to also look to spend the money to do the dilapidation works. So I've got to look at some way of financing those works during this period. I've not received any rental from the former tenant. They didn't pay me any rental during the COVID-19 lockdown. So I'm looking at least 6 months where I've not received any rent, a further 3 months before I can start marketing it. So from my point of view, I'm going to be left with a significant rental void, and also I'm losing out on insurance money. And because this is a retail unit, after 3 months, I'm going to have to start paying business rates as well, empty business rates. If only I had an industrial unit that I'd have longer empty rates protection, but that's not the case in this particular scenario. So I'm going to have to pay the dilapidations money. I'm left without any rent, and like I say, it's going to take at least 3 months to do that. So from my point of view, I think there should be a valid claim for loss of rent, because if the tenant had complied with their obligations, I'm of the view that the minute they left the property, I could have taken somebody around and I could have had significant interest. That's shared by my agent, who believes that we could have let it fairly swiftly. But because of the condition it's been left, I'm going to have to spend a lot of time, effort and money in putting the property back into repair, and that's going to affect my rental income, and I'm going to have a rental void. So yeah, I'm firmly of the view from a landlord's perspective that in this scenario that I'm due a loss of rent element, and there's every chance that the works may well be extended than 3 months. My building surveyor optimistically thinks it'd be 3 months, but that could be longer. So that obviously then brings into empty rates liability that I'm going to have to pay. So all of those added together, as Paul termed before, the mezzanine profits are going to soon mount up, which I firmly believe should be added to the contractual claim.
Right, Neil. Well, for want of boring you with a case, there is in fact, so far as I'm aware, quite limited case law on loss of rent, but an unreported case, but nonetheless quite oft quoted, the Scottish Mutual Assurance Society and British Telecom, in which it was shown that, or held that, if it can be shown that on the balance of probabilities, the carrying out of works to remedy the breaches at the end of the term prevented what would otherwise have been an immediate letting, then a loss of rent claim may have legs. I don't think in the case that you're involved in, you can demonstrate that you had a new tenant lined up, contractually committed on an agreement for lease and ready to occupy, and the only reason they couldn't occupy was because of the dilapidations works and the period it would take to remedy those. And so far as I'm aware, that those are the only circumstances really where a loss of rent claim might have legs. Now, I appreciate that there are circumstances where that happens, and that will come down to local comparable evidence. So if it's shown that there's strong demand for the type of property in question, I think that's unlikely in retail, to be honest, Neil, right now. But if it can be shown that there's strong demand for the property in question, and that on the balance of probabilities, it could have been relet straight away the day after the previous lease expired, and it can't be because there's 3 months worth of work purely on remedying dilapidations to do, then it sounds to me like there will be a reasonable loss of rent and other mezzanine profits claim. So if there isn't that evidence to show that there was that probability, then I think a loss of rent claim probably has little to no chance of success. There is another crucial point to remember, of course, though. Even if the lettings evidence shows that there is a strong market for a property and that it probably could have been let straight away, so that therefore in principle there is a bona fide loss of rent claim, we must remember, and you and I both have experience of this, that in more dilapidations cases than not, there are works that need to be done to a property in any event to bring it out of a time warp, to modernise and present it in the way that the market expects. So be that offices with removing the avocado toilets and putting in new LED lights and whatever, there are works that will be done to many properties to evolve them to their new life, their new use, to give them the modern specification. So not only do those works cause a delay anyway, even if the property had been vacated in perfect delay to its reoccupation, we commonly find that those works would have run in tandem for much the same period of time. And therefore that's going to nullify a loss of rent claim, I would suggest. And then the added point to go with that, of course, is that with those works of modernisation and upgrade, there's probably going to be a heck of a lot of supersession too, i.e. items that have been claimed for that are going to be overridden by those upgrade and modernisation works. So in conclusion, on my part, I would say that unless it can be shown that there's a high chance, or on the balance of probabilities, the property would have been relet straight away, and that the only reason it couldn't be is because of the period to do the dilapidations works, not in any way conflated with modernisation and upgrade works, then, and only then, might there be a successful loss of rent claim. We have some conclusions, which I think Neil will start off with.
Yes, I mean, what you just ended there, I think follows both of our recent experiences or experiences over the last few years. And I think loss of rent is probably going to become more and more probable during these pandemic times, where landlords try and add it on to their claim, especially where, I think, as I said in the previous webinar, where landlords haven't received rental income for so long, from some, especially on retail units. You know, everyone has been trying to secure rental holidays, rent reductions of some sort, and I think they'll be seeking to add on this loss of rent just to try and inflate the claims in some way. But I think we've had a handful where we've actually agreed loss of rent claims, and there have been where a landlord can prove beyond any reasonable doubt that they had a tenant ready and immediately ready to occupy the property immediately as we as former tenants vacated, and the only reason they couldn't take occupation was because specific works were required. So I think they'll become more common, but I think on the flip side there'll be more reasons to dispute it from a tenant's point of view, because of, especially on retail units where there's just so much availability.
Yeah, I think the circumstances are shifting even more in favour of tenants to rebut a loss of rent claim, but one can't help feeling that it is a bit unfair for landlords, especially when there is the term I've been using, rental starvation. So if you have a portfolio of properties in respect of which very few tenants have been paying, you're genuinely unable in terms of cash flow to be able to afford to do the dilapidations works until you've got the dilapidations money in. Meanwhile, the property is not well presented, and if there are very few tenants in the market for the type of property relative to an increasing supply as properties fall vacant, logic would suggest that only the best presented property is going to have a chance of letting. So it does seem a bit unfair, and therefore perhaps the case law will evolve further in the months and year or two ahead so that a broader spectrum of contemplations are given merit in terms of assessing whether or not loss of rent is applicable. As ever, folks, each case on its own merits. Thank you very much for listening.